Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Empower Series Online. For those of you who are new, my name is Clifton Johnson. I'm the founder of the Empower Series Incorporated. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization brought to you by the generous donations of Comerica Bank, AE Media Group, and you, our viewers in the United States and around the world. So thank you. You want to find out more about the Empower Series, definitely connect with us on social media. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and you're on YouTube right now. So you got to like us, comment, and more importantly, you got to share it with other people, because the only way people are going to find out about the Empower Series is if you share it with them. You can also go to our website, www.empowerseries.com, and find out more about what we're about. We are about giving hope, inspiration, education, and more importantly, connection to resources to really help you take that next step to achieve your goal, whether it's financial goals, personal goals, or business goals. Also, there's a button for donations. So if you would like to donate, we would greatly appreciate that. Not required, but definitely appreciate it. And definitely stay connected with us. Today's topic is going to be around mental health or mindset. And that's been a theme for the past few programs. And I think it's just so important to talk about. Our guest today is a previous Empower Series speaker. He was actually the speaker during the National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And his name is Karlos Lyons. He's a licensed professional counselor associate at Lifeology Oak Cliff. And he's going to talk to us about a couple of things. You know, when we wake up in the morning, we always take care of our physical bodies. So we may take a shower, take a bath, brush our teeth, thing between our ears, all that good stuff, take mouthwash, and just take care of ourselves physically. So we have physical hygiene. But how often do we really take care of ourselves mentally? Do the mental hygiene, get ourselves prepared for the day. And then throughout the day, we go through all these thought processes, and we have all these things coming into our mind. Some are intentional and healthy, and some may not be that healthy. So at the end of the day, how well do we kind of go through a detox process? So mentally, we're going to give that some attention and talk about what are some practical things that you can do to really have better mental fitness and mental hygiene. That's what we're going to talk about. And without any further ado, Karlos, welcome back to the Empower Series, man.
I appreciate you for having me back, Mr. Clifton. Yes, it's an honor to be here to talk about this today.
Well, I tell you what, I want to start with gratitude and appreciation, right?
Yeah.
So I know that you're busier than all get out. I want to thank you for taking a portion of your life, carving that out, and really spending time with us in the Empower Series community and empowering us and really talking about the mindset and how, we're talking a little bit about neuroplasticity and how our brains can, in some cases, even heal ourselves, right? Or heal itself. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. Before we get into that though, I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself, because a lot of times when we give advice, we have the appearance of speaking from a pedestal. Like, right. Okay, hey, this is what I've learned. This is what I'm all about. Yeah. But we're all in this together, right? We all have our ups and downs. And so I want to tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey, how you got into this. Absolutely. And how you're really, when you're giving advice, you're really helping people through the experiences that you've gone through. You're not just speaking from a pedestal.
Right. So yes, as you stated, I am a LPC associate and I work at Lifeology Oak Cliff as an outpatient therapist there. And my journey into the profession, I really feel like it just kind of chose me, honestly, just through my own life experience. I would say it goes as far back as 2015 when I really started making this mind shift. And during that time, there was a lot of personal chaos that was going on in my life. So I had significant deaths in the family that started happening kind of in quick succession, right? And I had two grandparents die within the span of a year or so. Okay. My biological father passed away at the age of 48. And we had a very distant relationship, but we kind of reconciled near the end of his life. Right. Then I had some cousins that were murdered. So basically with affiliation with, street violence, gang violence, that kind of thing. And so with all of that, that created a lot of existential crisis for me. And they normally say, there's research that says that for most 20-somethings, you go through your existential crisis at that phase of life. And I was in my mid to late 20s going through that. So that was one thing. on top of that, what really led to a lot of just mental angst for me was, as I was going through that crisis, I was having conversations with a particular individual, and they were good conversations, but it just had me questioning myself a lot. Had me questioning my purpose, had me questioning my relationship, my spiritual life was in question. A lot of my life decisions and my choices came into question. And so a lot of self-doubt, self-deprecating,
Oh,
a lot of that kind of stuff. Then adding grief to that and questioning, what's the meaning of life? So a lot of stuff was going on. And then also I was pretty much in the second year of marriage.
Okay.
And so newlywed, still trying to navigate marriage.
Right.
So I had a lot of stuff going on at that time. And some things that I needed to get off my chest that I didn't share early on in my marriage that I think would have been helpful. Just had me really insecure and just doubting and just in my head a lot.
Right.
And so really just kind of went down a spiral, just really went downhill nosedive into all of these negative thoughts, this really chaotic mindset. And I really saw how it affected me at work, right? When I started not being able to sleep is really when everything started hitting home. The level of stress, the level of anxiety, how I felt in my body every day, going to bed was just like a struggle, trying to get rest.
Right.
And even as I talk about it right now, I can even feel like that feeling, like what I started feeling like when I was trying to go to sleep. It's just like this tingly kind of restless feeling. And not being able to sleep is not a fun thing.
Yeah, I got you.
So going into that phase of like not being able to sleep, which exacerbated my symptoms, right? So it made things worse. And it's leading me to feel more depressed. And I went down such a spiral that it ended up having me go to the hospital. Like physically going to the hospital, because I was so worried and I was so scared and I was so anxious that I was dying, because I felt like parts of me physically, they felt like they were dying off. I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah.
And I went to the hospital. They kept me overnight. They ran some tests, asked me several questions. They were thinking of keeping me and diagnosing me with something, and left that process not being diagnosed with any kind of mental disorder, thank God, because what I learned from that experience was it wasn't necessarily that I had a long chronic mental disorder. It was just almost like a mental break or like a psychotic break, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like the level of stress and angst that I was putting myself on here was just, my body was reacting to all of that. And so that really so this is down the spiral, right? So we've gone down the spiral. On the way out, coming out of that spiral is where I kind of started coming up with the feeling of like, okay, so what is my purpose then? If I'm going through all of this and I'm stressed like this, and, even questioning like the reality of the world, and even now with COVID and things like that. Back then, if this was happening back then, it probably would have just
exacerbated.
It just made it even worse, right?
Yeah.
But I came out of that low place, kind of thinking like, okay, so how do I rebuild myself? Like, what am I supposed to do? And I thought about going back to school, get a master's degree. And I was looking at schools here in Dallas, and that's where I came upon Dallas Seminary. And they have a master's program in counseling. So for me, I wanted a program where I could integrate spirituality, faith with counseling and therapy. And I felt like it was the perfect match because it married two worlds that mean something to me. My spiritual life is important to me. But also, as I was going through this process physically, there were aspects of it that I wasn't getting the answers to when I was in church, if that makes sense. Right. So like we talked about last time, a lot of times in the spiritual world, whether it be church or you Islamic or whatever, we look at spirituality as like, okay, just pray about it.
Pray on it.
Pray on it. That
give it
kind
to
of
God.
thing.
Give it to God. Right?
Give it to God. Those kinds of statements. Nothing wrong with that. But then not being able to address, okay, like the physicality, the mental space that you're in from a therapeutic standpoint, the neuroscience behind all of it, and that really started to matter to me more. So literally when I was in the course of getting my master's degree in this program, there were so many connections being made because I'm learning about generalized anxiety disorder. I'm learning about what a panic attack is. I'm learning about what anxiety is. I'm learning about major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, all these different disorders. I'm learning about counseling methods and techniques to deal with these kinds of things. And literally in that process of learning, I came across a book by one of the people that we're going to talk about, Dr. Daniel Amen. It was in my counseling methods course. We had to read this book called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life.
Okay. Yeah.
And the premise of a lot of Dr. Amen's work, and he actually has a clinic in Irving called the Amen Clinic. He has them all over the country. But the premise is he does these things called SPECT scans. So he basically does brain imaging to assess a person's brain. So like, you know how you go to a doctor to get a physical and they do all the normal testing and everything. Literally what his SPECT scans do is just kind of get a full assessment of where you are mentally in like your brain, and trying to assess like where are there any neurohormonal imbalances or anything like that. And in that book, he talks a lot about neuroplasticity and the ability for your brain to change. And one of his taglines, if you ever look him up, he's always talking about you're not stuck with the brain that you have.
Interesting.
So for me, going through that and literally feeling like hell inside, like physically and mentally, just felt like hell. Just thinking about the fact that I can change the brain that I have, because what was happening to me was I was having so many negative thought patterns that I just felt like I was drowning in them. Like those narratives, those stories, those voices of self-doubt and insecurity were just overwhelming me, right? And I was just flooded with that. And I really felt compartmentalized. Like there's a lot of cognitive dissonance where I didn't feel whole. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't have a balance mentally or physically. And reading his book, going through the coursework, I literally started doing therapy on myself, just being in school. And we had to go through a process also as a student there of going to some therapy sessions, like 10 sessions, right? And so being able to sit down with somebody and actually talk about my stuff, unpack some of that, that process helped. But that really just kind of set me on the trajectory of wanting to do therapy full time. And from there, graduated, got licensed, and I'm working towards getting all of my hours for the LPCA so I can be fully licensed with an unencumbered credential. Okay. So to be a fully licensed LPC.
Well, man, thank you for sharing that with me. And while you were talking, I'm sure, our audience was listening, and there's some certain things that you were saying that they were like, yeah, man, they can resonate with that. And I was doing the same thing. I was like, man, it's like we're all in the same boat where stuff happens to us outside, and for some reason it's happening so fast, we're not able to process it. The way we think about it is a certain way. And it's almost like when I was going through, and while I'm still going through some of my stuff, it's like I know what I need to do, but then I just don't have any motivation to do it. Yeah. Right. And then also you're talking about not being able to sleep. I get little sleep, but it's not because I can't sleep. It's just I'm doing so much stuff, right? Yeah. So whether you trying to go to sleep and you can't sleep, and then you have the physical results of that, or you just got so much going on, you just like, man, it's like you can't shut it down.
So there's a part two that I didn't even share.
Okay.
The part two is COVID last year. Oh, so the beginning was 2014, 2015-ish, going into 2016. Went through like 3 or 4 years of just calm, right? Or just rebuilding mentally. Right. And then right before COVID hit, so I graduated in 2019, December 2019.
Wow, right before COVID.
Right before COVID. So graduating, then there's that resting stress or anxiety related to, okay, now I got to get licensed. Now I got to take this big exam. So that was on my mind, but I said, I'm going to take January to just take a break. I just finished a master's degree, just relax, do what I want to do. And then come February, start preparing for the big test we have to take, which is called the NCE. And did that. And then when I got into February is when the stress started really packing back on again. Then I fell into COVID right when the day that I took the test, March 13th, 2020, was the day that the announcement was made that the NBA was about to shut down and they weren't about to have any games. So there's the stress from the test, but I passed.
Congratulations.
Then there's COVID and all the fears that go with that, and just the media circus around this virus going around the world just has everybody panicking.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, we had to finish our lease in an apartment, and then my wife was ready to buy a house. So we bought a house in May. So this whole process is happening back to back to back. Then not to mention the fact that once I get licensed, like once I get all the paperwork to the state of Texas to get licensed, I got to find a job, try to find employment, because I haven't been working. Like I've been doing a lot of part-time stuff while in school. Now it's time to try to figure out like I'm going to get back into the field of like working full-time. And then add on top of that, going back to spiritual conversations again and getting me back into this space of like, what's the meaning of life and reality and all of that. And I went through that exact same phase that I went through back in 2015 last year.
Again. It came back.
And I came back into it.
Yeah.
And so what I learned from that was like, I really don't understand how powerful stress and anxiety has on my body. Going back into that. And I was so convinced last year, even back in 2015, that I felt like it was literally like these feelings of dying. I don't know if it's just like the way that my brain was trying to process what was going on. It's like, we're dying.
Mm-hmm.
So I was panicking all the time, like, what's happening to me? And so dealing with suicidal ideation, and never really had.
What's suicidal ideation?
So suicidal ideation is like contemplating suicide attempts.
Okay.
And not to get too graphic, but whatever your brain comes up with, sometimes you have popcorn thoughts that come in. Mm-hmm. If that's something that you struggle with, especially if someone is dealing with depression or anxiety, those kind of thoughts pop in. But like to have it repeatedly happening, that can become an issue. And for me, I was fighting that kind of, it wasn't like because I was like, oh, I don't deserve to live. Mm-hmm. It was more like, I don't know what's happening to me physically. So just like, let's end it. My body was like, how do we end this? Yeah. Now that's what it was thinking, but I wasn't going to do anything. Mm-hmm. And so to even admit that, it's kind of like, I can't believe I'm actually sharing this with a lot of people.
Man, I'm telling you though, man, you're blessing a lot of people right now too, because we're not alone. And so part of so two things I'm getting out of this. Number one is we really want to make sure that there is a recovery from COVID, mm-hmm. right? And there's a recovery also from whatever we're going through. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that you don't check the box and then you're good. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I meditated. Okay, I've detoxed. It's like, no, it's a routine that may come back again. And everything that you go through, there's a phrase that says, whatever doesn't kill you, make you stronger.
Absolutely.
And so when you go through these hardships and you get through the other side of it, it's like there might be something else come in that your past experience can help you get through it. Knowing that you've gotten through it, you can get through it again. Absolutely. And so yeah, that's what I was thinking about when you said then COVID came and you started going through the same process that you were going through in 2015. Like, again, really?
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't realize how much stress and anxiety could like just kind of take me over like that, mm-hmm. if I let it. And so now putting those checks and balances. But the beautiful thing about the whole journey in all of this is that I have felt physically, mentally, emotionally, all of those, the healing process happening every single day. And it's really, I did not go get any antidepressants. I didn't get any anxiety meds. I went to a doctor, like a neurologist back in 2015 to do some brain scans. And they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like she literally told me there's nothing wrong with you. But I felt like everything was wrong.
But also when she says that, it's like, she's not saying that there's nothing wrong with the thoughts that you're having.
Right.
Like the thoughts that you're having.
Their thoughts are very, very real. But she was just talking about like the brain images.
Like physically.
What do you call it?
CAT scan?
CAT scan. Yeah. The physical structure of the brain and everything just looked normal. But I was feeling like, just going like chaos internally. And so like to go through that and to literally feel like you're dying and not to like take any medicine, to literally just kind of walk through it. To be on the other side of it is kind of like, wow, like the body, the beautiful part about it is the body and the mind really have the ability to heal themselves. Yeah. And so that's where I come from, is why I believe in holistic methods of healing so much. I'm not against pharmaceuticals. I'm not against prescriptions if that's what is needed to get a person jump started. But we just have to remember how intelligent our design is.
Yeah.
Like our mind, our brain, our physical body, it's extremely intelligently designed. And it's intuitive, it's smart, and the body's always working to get back
to heal itself,
to get back to homeostasis, to get to balance. Even when we have chronic illnesses and issues, it's really like our body trying to tell us, like, hey, this is something there. So I know there's a symptom, but let's talk about the root cause, right? And I know that's kind of going down a whole other path about medicine, but I've learned a lot about that just through walking through this for myself.
Right. So one of the things I've read in the book is that one of the hardest things that we have to deal with is believing in the future that we want when our current circumstances seems impossible. And that's with anything, with any kind of goal. It's usually a state that is not the current state that we're in, and we have to work towards it. And if we have a plan, we work out, we eat right, we save money, we can see ourselves working towards it. But if we do not see any path forward to make our future vision a reality, then that's another negative thought that can get into our minds. And so what I really want to talk about is, what are some of the things that you've taken away given those experiences that are, things that you can share with our community to really help people who may be going through the same type of despair that you went through, to give them hope and to give them that the ability to take the first step towards, or continuous steps towards, recovery?
I would say, number one, becoming more mindful of yourself in the way of checking in on your mental health, on your physical health. And I think we mentioned last time, we go to the doctor, right, for those annual checkups, right? And we get the physical done, get the blood work done, and we see where we are. And so I would say the same applies for our mental health. We need to be checking in with the therapist. We need to be checking in with someone, but some professional, mental health professional. That's one thing that I had not done that before. I was literally just kind of going through it, just kind of figuring it out. And all the voices that I was hearing, they were coming from more of a spiritual place.
Okay.
So I didn't have a lot of the mental health experts in my life yet. Now, being in this field, there are a lot of people I can refer to and talk to, and a lot of books and resources that I'm familiar with. Now I know how to find help, right, for that. But then really it's just becoming mindful of the body. I believe tuning in to where you are. And I made a simple check-in, mental health check-in with some questions, if that's okay to share.
Yeah, definitely. And also there's going to be links below the video of all of the things that we're talking about, additional resources, because we're only going to have so much time to talk about these things.
Yeah.
But definitely I wanted to know, like, okay, so if we're taking a mental assessment of where we are, how do we do that? So definitely. What are the questions we ask ourselves?
So these are what I call simple Q questions to ask yourself. If you just want to do a check-in just to see where you are. The first is, how am I feeling on a scale from 1 to 10? 10 being like really, really good, and 1 being bad. Or if you want to flip it and say, what's your level of stress on a scale from 1 to 10? 10 being really, really bad, 1 being not, like there's no stress really.
Okay.
And then describe what you feel.
Put words to it.
Put words to it. Yeah. Describe it, not in just, I feel good, but like going beyond like the one word answer kind of thing. From there, do I have any tension in my body? Right. So if you would like to, if you do a scan of yourself right now as you sit here, and you think about, do I have any aches? Do I have any pains? Is there any tension in my shoulder? Tension in my head? What do I need to address physically? Right? Because sometimes that's a sign of stress. And stress is the silent killer. Right? And so I would say, before we talk about any major diagnoses of mental health stuff, like, let's start with stress. Acute stress. Right? That would be the first one. And then the next one is, what stress am I carrying and how can I release it? Right?
Okay. And stress from a physical perspective?
Yeah, stress can be both physical or mental.
Yeah, so it's on both cases,
It's
right?
on both cases.
So first you were thinking, how do I feel, and then describing that, putting words to it, emotion and things,
Yes.
and then taking an assessment of our physical state and where do we feel stress, and then how do we release that. And so it's a process of physical releasing the stress, but then also some thoughts that we're having that we're probably holding on to that's creating some of that physical stress.
Yeah. And I was going to say this too when we're talking about the brain. Like there's pieces of our brain, I mean, all throughout our body because of this just intricate neurological pathway and all these neurons and vessels and veins and cell, like it's all interconnected. So the mind-body connection is linked. It's not inseparable, honestly. Like they go together. They make up the whole totality of the person. Some people kind of go into this space of calling it spirit or soul. But yeah, it's the total man, right?
Okay.
And so that's why I say physical and mental. It's not even just one or the other. But then also the next question I would say is, how or who do I have in my support system? Do I even have a support system?
Who are your people, right?
Who are my people? What does my tribe look like? Do I have people that I can talk to?
And to your point, I may not have a tribe. I'm all alone, right? And then I got you.
Mhm.
We'll talk about what to do with these answers later.
Yeah.
But this is good stuff. Okay, so
Yeah.
are those, what other questions are that?
Two more questions. Who and what do I need to let go of to maintain my sanity?
Word.
Who or what do I need to let go of to maintain my sanity? And that's really talking about mental detoxing, right? You know, being able to detoxify your life. What baggage am I carrying? What stuff do I need to unpack that is still I'm holding on to? Is there conflict with someone that I have left unresolved that I need to address?
Yeah.
And people have grudges and offenses that they're holding on to, and it's creating stress. People have ulcers from stress. Women, specifically minority Black women, can grow fibroids from stress.
Wow,
you know, that's a thing that we're really susceptible to in the Black community. Is they're benign, obviously, but it's still growing inside of their.
It's a physical manifestation
Physical
of a thought.
of a thought process. Yeah. Absolutely. Then the last question is, what environment makes me feel at peace? And so, environmental toxins has a profound effect on our mind and our body, right? So not even just relationships, but just the air that we breathe, where we live, like the neighborhoods that we live in, the cities that we live in. Do we even get enough time outdoors? Do we get to be in nature? You know, because we live I don't know where you live, but I know I live in Dallas, right? And so there's traffic and there's people. I mean, traffic is a form of stress.
Yeah, I tell you, people, you move out to the suburbs and it's a different kind of living than being urban, right?
Being in the city.
And I'm downtown. And so even downtown has its different pockets where you buy, Victory Square or Farmers Market or if you're straight up in the hood of downtown, right? When you walk out and you can smell you smell life.
You smell life. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. And so you're right. And you got to think about that. So you ask yourself these questions, being mindful, and the more you're tuned in. So, every day you can ask yourself that, and that's not too often.
Yeah.
But then you get these answers. Then what do you do with that?
So then you start building a mental health practice. And so when we talked about hygiene earlier, when you were talking about brushing your teeth, all of that, like taking care of your body, those daily habits, I would say mental hygiene really starts with getting some practices that you feel comfortable doing on a daily basis. We like to call that self-care.
Okay.
Right? That's the simple therapeutic term that we like to use, is practicing self-care. And so when it comes to these questions, these are things you can do in a journal, right? So I would say keeping a mental diary, journaling your thoughts and ideas, just what comes into your head every day, what's coming across my mind. And we are always thinking. Like our brains are
never off.
It's never off. Even when we're sleeping, it's working.
Yeah.
Our entire body is obviously working, but when we sleep, like you notice, we kind of go into a 8-hour coma, honestly. So the heart rate goes down. There's certain function, excessive motor skill, and all that kind of stuff shuts down while we're sleeping. But the brain is still working and
still
doing.
Kicking.
You know what's happening when you sleep?
What?
The brain is doing detox, right? So even when you're dreaming, your brain is detoxing, is getting rid of stuff. So just things are happening. The body's supposed to. That's why sleep is so important. So when you don't get it, your body is building up more toxicity
That's a trip. You're right. Because you need that physically even to recover from working out.
Yeah.
Rest. And we tend not to think that we need that mentally as well. And if we're not getting enough sleep, it's not just affecting us physically, it's affecting us mentally. It's not giving our brains enough time to go into those deep REM sleep and go through this detoxing process.
Absolutely.
Mentally.
And there's not enough that's can be said about sleep. And over the course of the time that I've experienced sleep depravity, you know, like I don't know if it was insomnia or what, but I know I was sleep deprived. And having that experience and knowing what that feels like and hating that space of night after night after night of just not being able to fall asleep. And when I do fall asleep, like it being in these 2 to 4 hour spurts of time.
Yeah.
I really became really acquainted with the importance of sleep. So I even built a whole practice around sleep hygiene. That's a part of a mental health regimen, right? But I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Well, I think it's interesting because what we talked about is not, I mean, if this is all we talk about, we've made a big difference. So the whole process of journaling, everything you've talked about, it could be a journaling process of asking yourself those questions and journaling your answers to see where you are. And I like the question of what do you need to let go of? And it could be people and relationships, or it could be a thought, right? And then if there's an area that you really need some help in, you can seek out help.
Absolutely.
Get help in those areas. But also just the journaling process in and of itself, that exercise helps us solve our own issues. It's another way of thinking through things. The process of writing it down and going back and reviewing it eventually gets to the right answer, because when you go to a counselor, they kind of help you think it through. You know, you don't necessarily have the answers, but you can help guide your patients into thinking through what's the right answer for themselves, right?
Yes. And I was going to say, one of the things I learned in the course of reading books like Dr. Amen's book, The End of Mental Illness, and Dr. Caroline Leaf is another one that I like. They talk a lot about how thoughts create physical structures in our brain, right?
Okay.
And so when you have a toxic thought, we have toxic thoughts. They create like toxic trees, if you will. If you look at how they're shaped, they look like a little tree in the brain. And so really what this is all about is energy. Like we are composed of energy.
Right.
And I know people talk about vibrations and energy and vibes and all that kind of stuff, but like it is true. Like we really are made of energy. And so when you have toxic thinking, chronic toxic thoughts, negative thought patterns, it's creating a physical structure somewhere in your brain, as well as different parts of your body, which is creating these kinds of tumors and all this kind of stuff. And so with that, the process of journaling, the physical process of writing out what I'm feeling, because I know when I've had moments where I'm just like, I need to process somehow. I haven't had an opportunity to go see a therapist, but I just need to get it out. You know, when people say I just need to get it out,
right?
Like in a healthy way, like writing it out physically, not even just texting or something, but like writing it out with a pen and paper. That process of just getting all those emotions out is giving that energy away. So it's kind of getting rid of it, right? But then also exercise. That's another part. Physical exercise is like irrigation for the brain. It's like your brain does all types of firing of just new baby cells, new neurons and things, just like growing when you exercise. So there's not enough that could be said about like physically moving, getting your body. And I'm not going to say like what that looks like, because that could be different for everybody, but whatever you enjoy. If you're incorporating 30 minutes of sweating
of something,
right? Yeah, if it's yoga, if it's walking, if it's running, if it's lifting weights, swimming, whatever, like just getting that motion, like getting your body in motion, is also a part of helping the brain to grow.
Okay. Yeah. And so I like that, because really the first thing that we're talking about is being mindful and aware of where you are mentally, your thought process, as well as physically. Where are you feeling stress? You know, what do you need to let go of? You know, who are your circle of people to really? Dr. Dennis Kimbrough said one time, if your current group of people are not inspiring you and helping you to move forward, you need a new group of people. And if you don't have that group of people, then the question is, where do you go to get it? And so we can talk more about, you know, connecting with people with the Empower series, right? Right. You know, what is your tribe? But those are things I think from the very beginning, the self-assessment, self-care, journaling, and the physical activity of working out, those are two practical things that can really help people overcome the state that they're in.
Absolutely.
And this umbrella of the pandemic, who knows if we'll ever get out of it.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about now are principles and tools and practices that can help us get through whatever is in front of us and what we're going through now with the pandemic.
Yeah.
So outside of mindfulness, journaling and answering the questions and getting all those things down and physical activity, what other steps and practical steps?
So going back to sleep, I want to
Okay.
go back to that because sleep hygiene is a whole conversation that I have quite often with patients because we are just bad at it. I mean, I can include myself in that. And the reason why we're so bad at it is because of technology. I would say it has such a grip on our life. So going to bed with the TV on, going to bed with our laptop, going to bed with our cell phones, all the stimulation that's coming through the airwaves.
Man, I'm bad because I say I should go to bed at 10.
Yeah.
And wake up at 5 at least.
Yeah.
Or 6.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I look at 10, I'm like, all the stuff I haven't done. And so this other book says you have to realize that you will never get it all done. And I feel like I need to have a parent like when I was a kid and they said, okay, time for you to go to bed.
Right.
You don't want to go to bed. It's like lights off.
Yeah.
Go to bed.
Isn't it crazy how back in the day they forced you and you were really mad about that, but then you get older and it's like, I really should force myself to go to bed.
I need that.
I need that. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, the sleep hygiene space is because, we're overstimulated, we're working and we're just go, 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 go. So the output is always there and we're not giving our body and our mind time to detox. Mm-hmm. So what I emphasize with sleep hygiene is setting a reliable and consistent bedtime.
Yeah.
So if that is going to be 10, let that be 10. If it's going to be 11, let it be 11. If it's going to be 12, let it be 12. But then also recognize and be able to calculate what's your cycle of sleep. So they call that REM sleep. Right. And there are calculators, like you could just go on a Google search, like what's an adequate sleep cycle, which usually lasts somewhere between, I think 90 minutes or so, like to get to that space. Mm-hmm. The thing is, when we do it for that, like it's recommended for 8 hours. But honestly, like when I went to the doctor, the neurologist was like, because I was just tripping over, like, I'm not getting enough sleep. Doc, I'm not getting enough sleep. And she was like, if you're not able to get the 8 hours, that's just a recommendation. It's just the fact that you're being able to sleep. Like that's important. And your body will reset itself if you give it an opportunity to do that. It'll reset itself when you get back into a sleep schedule. So say you are only able to sleep 4 to 5 hours and you're like, okay, Karlos told me I need to get on the sleep schedule. I need to have good sleep hygiene, go to bed at a certain time, wake up at a certain time. But it seems like I keep having interrupted sleep. Mm-hmm. Don't freak out. Because that's what I did. I was like, what? I'm awake. Mm-hmm. Why am I awake? Then the mind starts doing all that. It's like the racing thoughts. Mm-hmm. And when I've talked to like lots of people about that, like the racing thoughts, they can't shut their brains off because it's always on go, 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 go. Right. So learning how to be able to breathe through that. And that's where you just have to take some deep breaths. If you're not able to sleep, don't freak out. Do something else. Like I
don't sleep. Your body's not.
Just do something else. Do something that's maybe not as overly stimulating as like watching TV or something. But
read a book. Right?
Read a book. That might help you fall back to sleep. Journaling. Yeah. I've done that multiple times. All that helps you go back, right? And it just happens naturally. But also another thing is the temperature. Between 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit is normally a good temperature for sleep.
Is that right?
That's exactly right.
So it can't be too cold.
Can't be too
hot.
Can't be too old.
Can't be right.
Just kind of where them. And I love it at 68. Like 68 is my jam.
Okay.
If I'm too hot, I'm up. Mm-hmm. And I think most people's bodies are like that. Like if they're hot, it disrupts your sleep.
Yeah.
Now, for me, and they say like sleeping is really good when it's colder, honestly. So I would say that's important. Also knowing that you need to kind of get off the gadgets before bed.
Oh yeah.
Right. So turning the gadgets off. I take my phone and I put it outside the room.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the practice of like not even using my alarm to wake up anymore.
Oh, okay. You just use your natural body.
My natural body rhythm to wake up. And my voice is kind of going in and out, so excuse me. But yeah, I normally just go to bed put the phone, put the watch up, and then put the computers away, turn the TV, unplug all that.
So do you normally do that at a certain time before you go to bed, so you gradually into it? Like, what is your time to go to sleep?
So I'm not saying I'm perfect at this.
Okay.
I don't do this every single day.
Right.
As far as like having put everything up by 2-3 hours before bed, but I definitely get everything out of the room when I'm going to bed.
Okay.
So like your bed is made for sleeping.
Like, no, there's no TV in the room, right?
No.
Okay. Good.
Like sometimes we'll watch TV in the room, but like I unplug all that stuff when it's time for bed. Like I don't like going to bed with the TV on.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we just weird like that. We just unplug everything. So it's just stuff.
So your wife is like that too, right? You guys.
Yeah.
Were you guys different in any of those areas when it comes to resting, or were you guys on the same page?
We both like sleep.
Okay. Wait, you like sleep?
I like sleep.
You like?
Yeah, we both really, really like sleeping. So I mean, she works at her own like schedule. Her schedule is different from mine. I have to be somewhere at 8:00 every single day.
Yeah.
So like, if I don't make myself go to bed by this time and wake up at this time, then I'll be cranky and I'll be irritable and I won't want to deal with my patients, and that's not a good thing. Whereas for her, she just can go to bed whenever she wants to, but we typically don't go to bed later than like 10:30.
Okay.
Like 10:30 is our hour to go to bed.
Okay.
And so what I'm saying is like getting rid of all those distractions in the bedroom so that your bed is made for sleeping. We don't work in the bed. We don't do a lot of that stuff. Now, early on, before I learned about all this, we were doing that.
Okay.
Right. So this has been a learning process for both of us.
Right.
And she kind of adopted this because
through your practice.
Yeah, because it was my practice. The other thing I would say, so we talked about the temperature. We talked about getting rid of the gadgets, is the eating. A lot of people eat late, and that can jack you up too.
Really? Okay.
And I know that from personal experience, from just when I eat like right before bed, then I'm up and down going to the bathroom.
Okay.
Got to go to the bathroom 2 and 3 times a night, and that's not restful.
Yeah.
Your body is still working, and we don't realize that if we eat close to bedtime, that we really should stop eating 3 to 4 hours before we go to sleep.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So those are all best practices.
Best practice.
Right? Yeah.
Best practice. 3 to 4 hours before bed. So if you say, I'm going to bed by 10:30, can you be done by 7-ish, somewhere in there, with your eating? Because depending on what you ate, it's going to take some hours to digest.
Yeah.
And for most Americans, they eat a lot of heavy food, like lots of meat, lots of dairy, lots of refined carbs, lots of junk food, things like that.
So another person talked about this in the very beginning. Your first step was to be mindful of yourself, like take a checkup of where you are mentally and physically with stress. The same thing when it comes to food, because everybody's body is a little bit different as well. So be mindful of how your body's reacting to food, and over time, your body's going to react different as well. So it may sound like work, but truly, if you get used to this, and anything new may seem like work in the very beginning, but after a while, you become used to it. It's just checking in and being mindful of how your body is reacting to, your sleep cycle, the level of sleep that the food that you're eating, and how long it's taking your body to process that. Exercise, what exercise makes sense for you. Some people like to wake up in the morning to exercise.
Yep.
Some people like to work out at night. It all depends on your clock. So those are all important things. And again, there's going to be a link below where people can do more research and find out what works for them. Yeah. But this is good stuff, man.
Yeah.
This is good stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, the sleep, if we can just boil it down to some really easy takeaways. So check in with yourself.
Okay.
Right? Do those questions, or however you think is best for you to check in. If you're just doing some kind of scale of just saying like, how am I feeling? What's my level of stress? Where am I holding tension in my body? If it's just those 3, that's a good place to start. Right? Okay. And be just kind of doing a scan of self. Where am I right now? And doing that pause, because we don't do enough pausing either. Yeah. Like we go to bed with the gadgets. And
always
the phone,
running. Always
and we
running.
Wake up with it, right? But if we can do that, then also start a sleep habit, like a sleep hygiene practice. Yeah. As well as the mindfulness practice of journaling, or whatever you find easy for you to kind of check in with self. If it's going for a walk in nature, just processing that way. I don't want to make it so scripted, but I definitely want to say anchor points, like sleep is an anchor.
And these are guidelines as well. So it's not like we want to create more stress and say you got to do all of these things.
You got to do all these things, right?
You can take, of those things we talked about, what speaks to you, and start with that one, right? What about meditation? Is that something that that always throws up? It's thrown out there as,
meditation boils down to the power of the present moment.
yeah,
Because when it goes back to stress and anxiety, at least in my case, and I'm pretty sure for millions of Americans, we're usually stressed and anxious about future things.
Yeah. So it's either the future, or it's past regrets.
It's past regret.
And it's like,
and so I was in a mind storm between both when I was going through my stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was a mind storm of like futuristic, catastrophic anxiety, fears about the big picture and what is life and all this. Then all my life regrets of the shoulda, woulda, couldas, but I didn't. And how do I make peace with all of that? And I was just kind of going back. My mind was like, you're overloading me. You're taxing me too much. This is too much. So we're just going to start breaking down.
And actually, in the present moment, that's all we've got.
That's all we have.
And everything else is a construct of the mind. So the future is something that we've created. The past is something that we're not in the past anymore. All we've got is today.
This present moment.
And the present moment is always perfect, right? No matter what we're going through, it's what we've got. And then if we can quiet down and get ourselves in that moment, and then make a mindful choice about what is the next best thing to do, the next best thought, that will help us slow down to the natural speed of life. Because life is not really fast. It's always going one speed. The only thing that's changing is our thought process.
I've thought about this. As a kid, I have such fond memories of my childhood. I don't know if I've over romanticized my childhood, but I really like the way I was raised, just being a kind of, I would say, semi-country boy. Like I'm from West Tennessee and my grandparents live in small towns, and like growing up with my grandparents in a small town, being outside, just nature, just playing. Then we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have all this kind of stuff. The practice of just being present in the moment as a kid was way easier than, at least for me in my case, than it is now. And I think about that phase of life, like I wasn't worried about the future as a kid. I wasn't worried about my past. I was just like soaking. I was literally soaking in everything that was happening in the present moment. And that's what you're doing when you first get into the world. It's like you just taking everything in. And so meditation is kind of getting you back into that space of absorbing what's happening right now versus like all of the other stuff. But it's quieting the mind, as we talk about so much with meditation. And the thing to remember too with meditation is you're not going to be good at it at first. You're going to suck at first. So don't even bug out if like I'm sitting there trying to do my mantra or quiet my mind for 20 minutes. And there's all this stuff that keeps popping up, like, I got this paper, or I got this assignment, or I got this deadline. That is going to happen. But if you stick with the practice, the same way we talked about the mind being able to heal itself, your brain is going to adapt. It's going to adapt to those changes. It's going to make room and space for that for you to be able to do that routinely. And it's going to get into a space where it settles itself. Okay, so now it knows the brain activity is going to, like the waves and all that, is just going to calm and settle.
Okay.
Right.
So let's talk about a couple of things. Neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
And let's talk about how you can actually change negative thought patterns.
Okay.
Or just, you can change thought patterns. Let's not call it negative or positive.
Just change thought patterns.
But you can change thought patterns. What are some, enlighten us on that.
Okay. So neuroplasticity is a fancy term that deals with the fact that our brains have the ability to change and shape and just the physical structure of our mind. Honestly, the mental patterns that we have, they're able to change. They're malleable, right? That's what that means. And so, as I mentioned earlier, with those trees, we create trees in our mind based on the thoughts that we have. So narratives, stories, ideas, words, things that we absorb in the life around us, they're creating physical structures in our mind all the time.
Okay. And
as we grow and as we learn, as we adapt to the world around us, it's creating new neurological pathways all the time. It's not going to stop happening. The best way to change negative or just thought patterns in general is to first think about just calling it out. Like, this is something I'm thinking about. That's what the first thing on the check-in is like, what are my thoughts? What thoughts am I having right now?
And what are the recurring thoughts?
What
so
are
if
the
you're
recurring
journaling,
thoughts?
you can, like, are these thoughts
What
that are coming back over and over again? Like you talked about your thoughts of suicide, right?
Yeah. It's like a mental diary. right? And you're taking stock of like what's coming in my head right now. When it comes to negative thoughts or when it comes to unwanted thoughts,
There you go.
you just want to basically be able to say, is there evidence to support this thought that I'm having? Do I really want this thought? Right? So when it comes to no one loves me, I'm not loved, no one likes me, those kinds of all or nothing thinking that people can go into, which can lead to depression and those kinds of things, or even anxious thoughts. You want to call into question, like, do I have evidence to support this as truth, or can I count this as false right now?
Yeah, that's a trick question, because if you have that thought, you might be only looking for evidence to support that negative thought, right?
Right. So then that's the next step, actually, is find evidence to either support it or deny it as something that you want to change.
Yeah.
This is a part of like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is basically talking about how your thoughts influence behaviors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But then if you think about this, let's say there's some truth to it. There's some evidence that, let's say I'm a procrastinator,
Mm.
and there's evidence to that, right?
Mhm.
So then the thought of wanting to not be a procrastinator. So you may have a thought to where I do things now, or I do things more on time, or whatever that the more productive thought you want. You may have to believe in that thought before there's actual evidence to support it,
Yeah.
right?
But yes, but I was also going to say, like, say it is like I'm a procrastinator. So you brought it out, you've noticed it, right? You have evidence to support that there is truth to this. I'm a procrastinator. So now you've identified the presenting problem. Now it's just finding out, okay, how do I begin to work towards changing that?
Like what are some solutions? What are some techniques to overcome procrastination? And then
Right.
start applying
Applying
those,
that.
and then you'll start gradually getting evidence that you are not what you do all the time. You're more than what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're
And then also
capable
I
of
know
much more.
people use the term positive thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that can be kind of like one of those stereotypical like self-help terms, but literally you do become what you think about the most.
That is that's cliche, but it's true,
It's so
man.
true.
You become what you think. Like, as a man thinketh, right? The
So is
book.
he. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's another book. Listen to these books, and those references will be down
Absolutely.
below. I mean, there's an audio version of that book.
Mhm.
If you just listen to it, it says so many things
Mhm.
that is like an aha moment.
Mhm.
So one of the things, I'll see if I can kind of say it, because I didn't even prepare to say this, but it talks a lot about, if we know that the physical manifestation of our situation
Mhm.
has a lot to do with our habitual thought pattern.
Mhm.
And it kind of talked about this cycle to where, if we want something to change externally, and we realize that our internal thoughts has a manifestation or influence on what we're experiencing, and we keep focusing on wanting to change the outside, but we're never changing our thought pattern, it's a cycle. It's like,
Cycle. A
why?
vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
And so truly, it's the belief first that everything begins in the mind
Mhm.
as a thought. Everything that we see was somebody's imagination and idea that at some point, gathered resources and people and material and formed what it is we're experiencing today. So having that belief that it first starts in the mind, and when you have that first thought, the outside world may not manifest that. You may not have evidence beyond just the substance of what you hope for,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Absolutely. And that kind of gets into metaphysics, like the metaphysical aspect of existing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you cannot, like we talked about last time, I cannot physically touch my thoughts right now.
But you can definitely feel them,
But
right?
you can definitely feel them.
Right.
And there's so much about words and just information that it's metaphysical. Like us talking right now, there's so much that's happening inside of you physically because of the words that I'm saying, because of syllables and the way that we use words. I mean, it's just it's miraculous, honestly,
Yeah.
to think about it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's powerful, man. That's powerful. So, man, we can talk forever again.
Sounds like we could really need a part 2.
But kind of to kind of wrap this up. And again, this is why we record these programs, so that people can watch them over and over again. This is also why we put links down in the description, because there's much more that can be done
Absolutely.
to go further with these concepts and these ideas that we've shared. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you if they want to continue or seek out your services or just connect with you?
So again, I'm a therapist at Lifeology Oak Cliff in Dallas. And my email address is carlosl@wefixbrains.com. There's going to be a link for that.
Spell that though.
Okay, so it's going to be KARLOSL@wefixbrains.com.
Okay.
Also, if you want to look me up on Psychology Today, I have a profile there, Carlos with a K, Lyons, and I'm an LPCA supervised by Robert Duckworth, who's an LPC supervisor. And so you'll see my information on Psychology Today like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, you want to contact me, 214-509-8383. I think that's my...
Put that out there. Right?
I think that's it.
Open that.
Yeah. That's it.
Hey, can I talk to Carlos?
Right.
This ain't Carlos' number.
Right. That's what's on my business card. So, yeah. But yeah, that's how you can contact me. I'm also on social media. I do have an Instagram and a Facebook, but primarily Instagram is where I interface with a lot of people doing like therapy stuff. So it's Mr.K Lyons.
All right. So what would be your closing comments? We talked about a lot, but what would be your closing comments to someone who, we've all are still getting through COVID. Even prior to COVID, we were having challenges. But what would be your closing comments to someone?
I just want to impress upon everyone that's listening the importance of taking care of your mind, because it's the only mind that you have, your body, because it's the only body that you have. We are in the midst of some extremely perilous times. I mean, this pandemic, like you said, we don't know when it's going to be ending. And so there's so much happening all the time. If we are constantly consuming the news and we're constantly consuming all the negative stressors from life, then we're going to be overwhelmed like I was at one point. And I know what that feels like firsthand, and it's not a good feeling. And everyone is not able to go to, therapy on a routine basis. And so some of the things that we talked about today, if you could just begin incorporating that into your daily life, doing a check-in with yourself, journaling, practicing good sleep habits, just trying to start somewhere, getting a habit started, that will give you a lot of leverage in just being able to conquer life issues, because life is going to continue happening whether you want it to or not. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily that the circumstances of life are going to change, right? It's just how you respond to them. Like, right. So what's your response to life as it happens? What's your response to COVID? What's your response to interpersonal conflict? And how you respond is the game changer in all of this.
Yeah. So I heard once that, life presents itself,
mm-hmm.
and then it gives you a choice. It's like you can either accept it
mm-hmm.
and, move on and keep going with the flow, or you can wish for something different mm-hmm. and be tense and upset.
Yeah. And life is going to continue to happen. So my closing remarks would just be beginning to take inventory of where you can start with yourself in taking care of the mind and making it a priority now versus waiting, because we're always changing, we're always growing. And if you're not using your mind, you're not using your brain, it's going to start like deteriorating as you age, right? Yeah. So learning new information, getting active, though, like I said earlier, that's like an irrigation process for the brain. So we have to do that to keep it sharp.
Continuous learning.
And this is a part of the learning process. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Karlos, thank you, man. My gratitude runneth over, right? So I appreciate you coming in and doing this program with us, sharing your personal story and also the wisdom and what you've learned from that truly is empowering people and is really inspiring them and giving them hope that they're not alone and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So really thank you for that. And I want to thank you for also watching and tuning in. As I said before, please provide us with comments. Stay connected with us. Do not let this be the last time you connect with the Empower series. And then share this with someone else, because there's somebody else within your circle that can be blessed by hearing this message. Much appreciation and thank you for all that you do in supporting the Empower series. And until we meet again, be empowered and inspired to thrive. Thank you for watching our Empower Series YouTube video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit the subscribe button below, as well as the little button to be notified the next time we upload our video. Until then, stay connected with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social media flavor is. Inspire the world to thrive. See you soon.